Hey, what's up you guys? It's Bloody Jacob here to bring you my weekly review of The Walking Dead. This week's episode is entitled The Distance. And I've been getting that mixed up with the Disappeared episode from The Strain. I've been watching that first season again with my dad. He's getting pretty into it. So hence why I'm getting the titles confused. But no, this week's episode of The Walking Dead was called The Distance. And it was one I really did enjoy. Actually more than last week's episode, and you guys know if you watched my review from last week, you'll know how much I enjoyed that one as well, despite some of the hate that I was getting, basically for being a slow filler episode. But if you want to see my more in-depth thoughts on that, you can see how heavily I disagree with that if you go back and watch my review from last week. And now, onto The Distance. As far as this week's episode goes, I actually thought it was an improvement. And it actually could be my favorite episode of Season 5 so far, which is a pretty big statement given the fact that most people point to the season premiere, No Sanctuary, when they busted out Terminus and stuff like that, which is a very great, exciting episode, especially to kick off season. But this one just felt like it had more overall substance to it. I don't know. Wasn't like overly action heavy, yet we got a great few action scenes, and then we also got some great character moments again as well, which is, in my opinion, what The Walking Dead should still thrive on. That's what they relied on in the earlier part of this series, and I'm glad they're still showing that that's really the best part of the show. So we start off, right away with Maggie and Sasha bringing in a character we know as Aaron, who's also a character in the comic books, if you didn't know that. I apologize for the focus, it screws up sometimes. But we see Aaron, and he's trying to talk off like a safe place for them all to go. He can bring them back there and different things like that. And Maggie and Michonne are actually fairly trusting of him, or at least enough to the point where they want to check it out. But Rick, surprisingly enough, his initial reaction is, complete paranoia, complete mistrusting. His biggest first response is basically goes up to him and knocks him out. So, and I was a little bit surprised by that, just because we're used to seeing Rick as being this nice and fair leader and stuff like that. At least for the most part, we know Rick has his moments. Obviously, if you've been watching, if you've been watching the show, you'll know he has his moments. But right here, again, this whole episode was really showing his heavy paranoia when it comes to everything now, pretty much. And I can't really say I blame him. If you're a fan of the show, you'll completely understand why he's acting like this. You can completely understand why any of them are acting like this to begin with. Because obviously, I don't want to jump around too much, but, when it came to, Woodbury, Terminus, different places like that, it sounded like on paper, it's so hopeful, it's so much of a chance, but look what both of those things kind of turned into. So they all pretty much have a right to be overly paranoid like this, as they should be at this point. So I don't really blame Rick for his difficulty in trusting Aaron throughout this episode. But Aaron turns out to be a pretty likable character so far, in my opinion. I actually like his character quite a bit. He's played really well. I don't know the actor's name, but I like how he portrays the character, and there's just a lot of great stuff in this episode. This whole thing, this sliver of hope we're suddenly having is something we're not really used to on The Walking Dead, and because of that, we see, like I said earlier, this group has a right to be paranoid, unless they're not used to this sliver of hope. Neither. But what they do is, they basically end up getting Rick to agree to go see if the cars are actually stopped in front of the trees that fell down they couldn't get through at night during the storm, as Aaron said. So Michonne and a few others go over and investigate that. And it turns out Aaron was actually telling the truth, and the vehicles are there. And, while they're gone, Rick and Aaron are having their awkward, intense little conversations. Aaron's trying to do little things to get Rick to trust him. Excuse me. Whew. That's what happens when you wake up at 5:30 every morning. But, he's not necessarily trying to get Rick to trust him. He's actually trying to be helpful because that's actually what he wants to do. That's actually how he is. And, Judith starts crying, and Aaron actually offers, a jar of applesauce he had brought in the backpack that they had, basically, what do you call it? They basically unpacked his entire pack. And with that came the applesauce. And the applesauce, Rick wasn't very trusting of either. So he actually has Aaron taste it first and eat some of it. And it's kind of funny because Aaron said, "Oh yeah, I hate applesauce." And he talked about his grandma or something, always making him eat it because he felt, to make him more manly or something like that. Which was kind of funny. And then once Aaron takes a spoonful of it, Rick takes some, and then, he probably does feed Judith some of it. So that was one positive step. And besides that, while the other groups, sort of checking out the vehicles and stuff, we come upon this RV that they brought along. 2 vehicles, 2 guys. Aaron said he brought just one other friend with him, who we meet a little bit later, which I'll get to in a little bit. And this RV, if you guys watch Walking Dead, it reminds you of one particular character. Or if you watch Breaking Bad, it could easily remind you of that as well. But in this case, on The Walking Dead, it reminds you of Dale. You guys remember Dale? He was heavily featured in Season 1 and Season 2 of The Walking Dead. He was... Spoilers if you're not caught up on Season 2 by now. Spoilers, he was killed off in the episode Judge, Jury, and Executioner, which was the episode right before Better Angels, which featured Shane's death. And, so it was a great little reference to Dale they put in there. And, and it's funny, when they're driving along later, they basically, the RV, screws up and they have to stop and start fixing it. And, Glenn knows exactly what to do to get him going. And, Abraham asks him where he learned that, and Glenn just sort of smiles, and, he didn't need to say it, he didn't need to go into this whole explanation. We know who he learned it from, Dale. It's one of the things he passed down to him. And I really do miss Dale as a character, and, I just think Jeffrey DeMunn, the guy who played him, was a really good actor, is a really good actor in general, and, it's a shame he was cut short on the show, but we can talk about that some other time. It was still really cool to have a little reference in there, letting us know that now they don't forget about these older characters that left such a mark on the series. Characters, like Shane, Andrea, and even Dale and Herschel and stuff. But even as far back as Season 1, it's nice to know that, it's still part of the history. It's still, part of their psyche and their minds and stuff like that. So that was really cool. And I know I jumped around a little bit there. And, but when they're in an RV, Abraham and Rosita also have a moment. And Abraham sort of points back to, before the mid-season where he was sort of, going through his trauma of finding out the whole thing with Eugene was a lie. And, he kind of flew into that rage and that state of frozen, you know what I mean? When he was just on his knees on the road. And, he was sort of, ticked off by anyone. He said to Rosita, I wasn't going to hurt you, right? And, Rosita sort of nods, and, So, that was a decent little moment between them, and, so there's just a lot, there's actually quite a bit to talk about in this episode. I think the character who was really a highlight of this was actually Michonne. I think she was actually the highlight of the entire episode, because she was the one who sort of pushed Rick to go along with any of this in the first place. I really like how Rick actually trusts her word. And, it's sort of like a case of Daryl. You can tell there's a lot of respect between Rick and Michonne. And, of course, that hits the feels for my, inner Michonne shipper. And, so we'll get to more of that later. And more Michonne later as well. And let's see. So they do end up driving. Rick's still paranoid about, going to the community. Aaron wouldn't tell him the exact location of it. He said they drive him to this certain street, and then he'd tell him from there. But of course, they didn't trust another person to drive the car, to drive them into something. And Rick also didn't want to take the route Aaron suggested, because he thought, there could be some kind of ambush on that road that they always have set up or something along those lines. Again, it's understandable why he'd be so paranoid about all this, but it's also interesting how Michonne is, actually more of the optimist, more of the hopeful one. So that's some really good development for the character. I like that. And she's not blind. She's not optimistic to the point of being stupid for being so. She's really intelligent. She's still one of the most intelligent survivors on the show. The three being Rick, Michonne, and Daryl, in my opinion, and Carol, I guess, to a point. She's not optimistic enough to be to the point of being stupid. She's optimistic and hopeful, yet still cautious and wary of things, which I think she has almost a perfect balance of. So that's really good. I really like that trait in Michonne. If you guys didn't know, Michonne's my second favorite character on the show, second only to Rick. So it goes Rick, Michonne, and then probably Tara or Daryl. I like Tara quite a bit. And I'm not the biggest Daryl fan, but my favorite two are definitely Rick and Michonne, no question. And I'll get some more on them a little bit later. But Rick basically just suggests they take another route because he's paranoid. That's going to take him longer, but he just wants to avoid any potential trap they have set there. And so they go out at night, which puts his group in danger. And that was a heavy discussion in the episode. Aaron basically stated, but you're also putting your group and your child in danger by not trusting me. So he may actually be putting him in more danger by not going along with this guy, or at least going along with him and scoping things out on the outside or something. So that proved to be very true, because the route Rick chose to take turned out to be a bit of a Walker Boulevard type of thing, and by that I mean the street was just full of walkers, probably a decent chunk-sized horde, I'd say. And that was really cool to see. It was nighttime, so it had a really good atmosphere, had a really good tone to it. And, eventually, they, drive through all these walkers, and eventually the walkers, bust up the car. And, the car behind them with the other group members, get separated. And so they're forced to get out of the car, and Aaron's starting to panic because he sees his flare go off, which is probably from his friend, who's probably in trouble. So he starts panicking, and we see them getting out of the car, and Michonne gets on the outside, and Aaron actually kicks the door open and knocks Michonne over. And I was a little bit worried about Michonne because she's getting loud concentration, and how The Walking Dead does it. They give a character loud concentration, and then they just, boom, gone. But in this case, Michonne survived, but I was still a little bit worried about her there, so it says something about the intensity of the scenes, and the group kind of starts running around, and they can't use the car anymore because it's busted up from running through all those bodies, and the car is basically about to be swarmed and stuff anyway, so they'd be kind of trapped. And so they start going into the woods. They're going to follow where the flare came from Aaron's friend, and we get some really good walker kills in this woods area too at night. We see Rick, he actually uses the flare gun, and he shoots into this walker's skull, or it actually goes into the walker's mouth, and it really it lights it up, and you can see the skeleton and stuff like that. It looks a really cool effect there. I like that a lot. And it falls on the ground, and it sort of lights up the whole area of walkers, and so that was a really cool effect. I like that. So that's probably the walker kill of the week. Goes to Mr. Rick Grimes, and yeah, it is still a little nerve-wracking in that woods at night because we see Michonne, taking some walkers down, splitting their heads in half with her katana, of course. Rick doing his usual sharpshooter with his Lincoln revolver, and also Glenn was at risk here for a little bit because Aaron ran off, and Glenn actually, he was shooting down walkers. He shot down like quite a few in a row, but one came up from behind him and tackled him to the ground. And this is one of them they showed in the previews. Like they showed like a walker coming behind Glenn while Glenn was firing. So my dad was a little bit nervous at the scene, but usually they don't show deaths like that in a preview. Or if they do, it's like a split second. But yeah, Glenn manages to, he manages to get out of that. And he actually comes across Aaron, who's, still has his hands tied, and he's like kicking Walker away as he's, standing against a tree. And Glenn could have left him behind right there, but he didn't. He actually chose to save him, and he did. And so, it probably builds a little more trust with Aaron. Aaron is saying they all seem like good people. He's been watching him for a while. He actually left that water for him. And so that probably built the trust up a little bit more from Aaron's perspective anyway, even more so. And eventually the group does get back together, and they do reunite with Daryl and the others. And they do get to the destination from where the flare came from, and we find Aaron's friend. I think his name's Eric. I hope I'm right about that. Let me just look that up real quick. I think it's Eric. Yeah, Aaron and Eric. And Aaron and Eric turn out to be a gay couple. And this has sparked a lot of controversy, as this kind of thing always does, especially on TV. My viewpoint on it is I have no problem with it whatsoever, really. I have no problem with like homosexuals in general. I don't. I've done a speech at school supporting gay rights for everyone, no matter who they love. Who they love is who they love, and let them be happy. That's my basic stance on it. And I didn't really have a problem with Aaron and Eric being introduced as a gay couple here. Now the only time I have a problem with it is when they have an established character and they just sort of like have him kiss a guy or have her kiss a girl out of nowhere when he like had no indication of that whatsoever. Because then it would feel like just for shock value. But the fact that we have Aaron and Eric already established as this, and they're written as this from the start, it feels like it makes sense. It feels organic. It feels natural. And it doesn't just feel like it's for shock value either, because these characters are actually in the comic books as well. So it doesn't feel like shock value. It feels natural, and I really don't like the character of Aaron or Eric any less because of it. So I still find Aaron to be very likable, and I'm interested to see where he's going to go, at the community now. And they do have him and Eric do have pretty good banter back and forth. It was kind of funny. He had like sprained or broken his ankle, I think. He and Maggie did a quick assessment of it, from Herschel showing her everything and stuff. And obviously it was a broken ankle. So eventually they do reach the community the next morning. And, like the night before, Rick was hesitant to let Aaron and Eric, sleep in a certain area. But, of course, Aaron said the only way Rick was going to keep him away from Aaron that night was if we shot him. So, yeah, Rick actually let Aaron and Eric do what they wanted. So that was nice. And, so Rick's trust is slowly starting to go up a little bit. And they do reach the community in the morning. They reach the gate. And while they're driving the RV, we see Abraham. He sees what I think is actually the Washington Monument in Washington, D.C., of course. So that gets him a little bit happy. So we're basically right around there now, so which is really cool. And I actually didn't think we'd reach what they call Alexandria. I actually knew it was called Alexandria because I hear things about the comics and stuff, but I didn't think they'd reach Alexandria this quickly. I thought they'd delay it for at least another couple episodes, maybe a few more. But no, they didn't. They reached it right at the end of this one, so we'll be seeing it in the next week's episode. And we don't see the inside of it yet, but we see the gate. And we see Rick, he's sort of like having a hard time, sort of, as he told Michonne, he's having a hard time sort of like putting his trust into this because he thinks of Woodbury, he thinks of Terminus, and he doesn't want to like send his family in there again and put him in that position to die. And again, it's perfectly understandable. And he sort of like starts hearing children on the other side of the gates and stuff like that. And Michonne, we get a Michonne moment here. Michonne puts her hand on Rick's, and she sort of like eases him into it. And yeah, Rick and Michonne have to get together at some point, seriously. Because I think Rick's going to have another love interest at some point. I'm not saying when, but I feel like it's going to have to happen eventually. And I think no one makes more sense than Michonne. It can't be a new character. I don't think anyone else makes more sense for Michonne either than Rick. So, because of the dynamic she has with Carl as well, being sort of like a second mother figure to him. So I really hope they do get together at some point, and who knows, maybe since things might slow down around this community, maybe something could really, flicker. Full on. There's even like a time when I thought they were gonna go in for it in this episode, but I really hope that's what they're building towards. I love the couple. I think it'd make so much sense, and I'd really just be excited about it. So yeah, they reach the gated community, and yeah, so that's pretty much the episode. And yeah, a great episode. A lot of great acting in this one. Some intense Walker horror type of action scenes, and some great character moments as well, with Michonne especially. And Aaron was another highlight as well as Rick's psyche. So yeah, great episode. One of my favorites of the season, probably my favorite of season 5. I don't usually rate episodes I review of anything, but I think I'm going to start doing that now. I'd rate this one about a 9 out of 10, 9.5 maybe. The only reason it's not a 10 is for a minor little nitpick of the fact that they haven't given Tara lines in a few episodes now. I feel like she would have spoken up, about what to do about Aaron and stuff, since she's a little bit more like a helpful optimist at times too. So I feel like she would have spoken up there, but I don't know. They need to give Tara lines. Don't kill her off, please. She's very likable as well, and our only other gay character besides Aaron and Eric now. So yeah. But other than that, very good episode. I give a 9 or a 9.5 out of 10. The only reason it's not a 10 is for that little nitpick, and the fact that I save the 10s for like the greatest episodes of the series, like the landmark best episodes, like the biggest moments we've seen in the series. And this one was close to that, and who knows, it could still come out as my favorite, or at least one of my favorites of season 5. So that's a pretty fair point I'd put it at. So yeah, best episode of the season, my favorite at least. So I'll catch you guys next time for next week's episode, as well as for my Better Call Saul review later this week, and my Vikings review, by this weekend Sunday, of course. So yeah, I'll catch you guys for that stuff, and peace. Take a look at my Godzilla shirt. Pretty cool, huh? But yeah, I'll catch you guys next time for whatever, and peace. Jason Voorhees.